You know what every American wants, what every Republican wants, is a strong military. We realize that is our number one constitutional obligation. We want the most capable, the most lethal military in the world. We need them to maintain peace and security. When we do have to send them into harm's way, we want them to go with a clear mission, with every tool they need for victory. And then when they come home, we want to take care of the veterans. Make sure they're welcome, make sure they're cared for, make sure they have everything they need to succeed following their service to our country in uniform. Unfortunately, what we've seen lately is our military has, in many ways, gone off its primary mission of protecting and securing and preparing to continue to secure our nation. And they've gotten into social engineering, indeed teaching CRT and DEI and advancing things like gender ideology. We've heard about drag shows at military bases, taxpayer-funded abortion travel, taxpayer-funded transgender surgeries. And it's certainly affected our recruiting. It's affected our capabilities. It's affected our readiness and our ability to project power around the world. I was happy to support the NDAA as it left this Congress because it was focused, as it left the House and went to the Senate, because it was focused on getting our military back to its focus, its purpose of protecting and securing our country, of being that strong, lethal fighting force and getting out of what we've known to become this woke move toward the military that has affected our capability. Also, a part of that, let's talk about the process it was supposed to go to. We understand that we send forth a good bill from the House and then it goes to the Senate, and there's supposed to be a conference on that. As a matter of fact, many members worked to get on that conference committee. Many other members worked to support people who would get on that conference committee in order to work and support different objectives that were in there. And one of the couple things we were working on in our office was a bill that would let rank and file military be able to go into work in military contracting right after service. Now, there's been a law that was meant to keep, for example, generals who are making big time decisions about government, for example, going to Raytheon and serving on a board and because it wanted to make sure that their military decisions were not affected by future board positions. But the rank and file of our military kind of fell under that. And for example, we have an Army depot in our district where the rank and file cannot be employed after their retirement from military service there for 6 months until after they're retired. And by then, they've often had to move on and find other careers. We also had another provision that we were working on to make sure that the depots throughout our country who are tasked with the important duty of restoring and refurbishing our military hardware, supporting the warfighter and doing it in an efficient manner, that they continue to be able to thrive and survive. And those things fell off in what was our alleged conference. Now, this conference was actually, instead of the members that we elected to send there and to go to represent this body that we elected and voted on in this conference or in this Congress to send to conference, instead 4 people got together, the staffs probably of those 4 people made the decisions, and those 2 provisions were taken out of this bill as well. Let's talk about the House rules. All year, we've talked about rewriting the muscle memory of Congress. We've worked hard. I cannot tell you how many times we've heard the importance of single subject bills, and that we as Republicans were going to advocate for that. We weren't going to marry things that were extraneous to each other. We were going to have bills that had to deal with germaneness. We added a germaneness rule in January that had never existed, where we're going to say any amendments to bills have to be germane. Anything we're going to add onto a bill has to be germane. Well, come to find out that now we have the NDAA, which has come back from the Senate with a number of woke provisions added into it, and added to that now is a FISA extension. Now, in the Senate, the parliamentarian says that that is not germane to the NDAA. Now, in the House, we actually have a tougher NDAA, or a tougher germaneness rule. But how are we getting around that? Well, we're just going to put it on the suspension calendar. We're just going to suspend the rules and say the rules that we said we were going to operate by, we're not going to operate when it comes to this bill. This is a tragedy. And then finally, when it comes to the Constitution. Now, the Constitution's clear that Americans should not be unwarrantedly surveilled. Yet we know we have a DOJ that has been doing that. They've well extended their authorities. We had so much FISA abuse, literally hundreds of thousands of instances of FISA abuse, and yet we're asking for a clean extension of these provisions. Now, the Constitution was not written to be shredded in times of crisis or urgency. As a matter of fact, the Constitution was written specifically to place limits on our government in times of crisis and urgency. So it's not a time for us to look away and say, well, but if we'll shred the Constitution a little bit here. The very purpose the Constitution exists is to protect us in times like this and to make sure that we continue to protect the rights of the American people. And so it's extremely important that we do everything we can to make sure that we do not pass a FISA out of this House that does not protect the American people. We cannot continue to allow them to spy on the American people, to surveil them without a warrant. And so let's get back to what we're here for. The NDAA, we want an NDAA that's going to focus our military. We realize the importance of the first constitutional responsibility of this House to fund a military that will defend our Constitution, that will protect this land. We are willing to do that. Let's revisit this NDAA. Let's send this back to conference. Let's get us focused on what needs to be done. And for goodness sakes, let's not put a FISA extension that does not protect the rights of the American people.